Let me walk you through a quick demonstration of how Euno's context platforms helps enterprises enable AI at scale for their core data platforms like Snowflake, Databricks, Power BI, Tableau, and so on. And I will start with a quick demonstration of what is considered the holy grail, what I hear again and again and again from enterprise leaders. They want to connect their adopted AI agents like Claude or Cursor or ChatGPT or Snowflake Cortex or Databricks Genie. It doesn't matter. I mean, you name it, your preferred agent. It works for the email, for the business application, for different, tools, and they want to be able to answer data question. It's the same environment by connecting them to the data platform. In other words, the holy grail is to be able to connect Claude to Snowflake and be able to answer a question like, hey, what was the customer churn rate in the past year? Now, here's what happens when you connect Claude to Snowflake. It's going to scan all the tables and search for customer churn, and it naturally found 42 tables containing the word customer. Now it's going to scan those tables one by one to search for the right definition. But again, naturally, it didn't find a definition for churn because that's not the real, organic place for churn to live. So Claude's a great agent. It's going to offer a churn model because it knows, theoretically how to compute churn. It's going to suggest a generic SQL template. If you pick the table, I'll give you the number. But that's exactly what we don't want to happen, right? We don't want every business user to get its own churn number. So we're saying, hey, no, thank you. That's not going to work. And now we're going to repeat the same script, but this time we're also connecting Euno's context platform here to the host agent. Again, it can be Claude, Cursor, ChatGPT, whatever you choose, via MCP. And again, the same question. What was the customer churn rate in the past year? Now, Euno in the background is connected to your entire stack, all the data warehouses, all BI tools, ETL, ELT pipelines, observability and quality systems, security systems, and so on. Access, identity management, all the systems that contain metadata about your data in the stack. And it's continuously reconstructing a context graph. One of the key dimensions of this context graph is end-to-end column level lineage that is fully automated. And I'll show you in a few minutes how that looks. But when the agent gets a question about data, the first thing that it's doing, it's connecting to Euno to retrieve context via MCP. And here's what happens in Euno in the background. Euno can run a search across this entire graph that is continuously reconstructed, and it found 25 mentions of churn. It can filter for certified results. The ability to certify definition data assets column is a very powerful and unique capability that is critical for governance. You want to surface to AI only the things that are certified. But what's certified? The brute force approach would be to manually try and label and classify assets as certified. But Euno developed this unique rule-based mechanism where you can say something like, hey, if it's built in DBT, in the gold layer and it's queried by data sources in Tableau, then the metrics there will be considered certified and everything is automatically labeled. That's very powerful. So this already narrows down the results significantly. But then another key capability is to retrieve the actual usage, how often this is used and by who in the organization. And in fact, we realized that over 80% of things built in the data stack are actually abandoned and not used. So ability to attribute usage to fields, to metrics, to specific data assets is very powerful, is a very strong indication of relevance and business value. Now, and that's just an example, but after all that is executed and searched and retrieved, this context is surfaced at runtime to the agent, and this instant ability to surface context is critical. It needs to be fast. It needs to be part of the conversation you're having with the agent. Now, two things are possible. Claude is able to display, to present, hey, you have found two churn definitions that are relevant. They're both certified, they're both used, they're both legit. And one was actually found in the Tableau workbook in the finance domain. The other one is a calculated field in Tableau in the product domain. They were defined by different people. They're used and exposed in different dashboards that are viewed by different people and teams in the organization. One is actually computing the churn of paying customers. The other is computing the churn of active users, so that different definitions. This is, by the way, not retrieved from any dictionary or any glossary. This is the tool, reading Tableau code, computing lineage, and able to determine the definition and the logic. Now, just that piece alone of supportive context allows the business users, to understand, hey, this is how it's computed. This builds trust in the numbers they're going to get in a few seconds, right? This explainability piece is critical for AI. Just getting a number is very problematic. And actually, some of the enterprises we work with turn this into a rule. When AI reports a number, it needs to report a source table from which the number is pulled and the calculation side by side with the number. Now, with this supportive context, the business user is able to say, hey, I want you to use the finance definition. And now this is what's possible. Claude is able to connect to Euno to retrieve the query because Euno knows the code in Tableau and the column level lineage, so it's able to surface to Claude what's the query it needs to run on Snowflake. And now Claude is able to return the data for churn to the user. A very important thing to clarify here, Euno is not connecting to data. Euno is connecting to metadata and to the agent, and the agent is the one querying the data with the help of the context that Euno is surfacing at runtime. And now again, you can run follow-up questions like show me the dashboard where this metric is tracked. Again, Claude will connect with Euno that has the entire context that can send the link for the graph and so on. Okay, so let me walk you through Euno's platform and how Euno generates automated column level lineage that is complete and can be trusted and requires zero manual involvement. And before we start, this is a demo account that includes integration in the data layer with Databricks, dbt, Snowflake, Fivetran, SETL, and in the BI layer with Looker, Power BI, and Tableau. And I'm going to start with a very simple search. I'm going to, ask the tool to find tables called dim lead. Now, any query like that I type in natural language will auto-generate an EQL query, UnoQL. This is a querying language that queries Euno's graph database. Currently, we're using Neo4j. And what's cool about it is that you don't need to know it. You can always use natural language and it will be auto-generated. But AI agents can learn it very, very fast and leverage it when they need to query the graph for context. Now, here are all the results that we got. I'm going to pick one table here from production. This is a table that is defined by these DBT models. I'm going to scroll down. So for sensitive data, there is an integration with Sierra, the DSPM platform. We can integrate with BigID, we can integrate with Centra to pull sensitive data classifications. And these sensitive data classifications are associated with the columns in this table. We can move on to metadata and tags, usage data and cost data for 14 days, past 30 days, past 60 days, the write queries, the read events, and so on, the schema, the relationships, upstream, downstream, and let me go directly to the column level lineage. Now, this complete end-to-end column level lineage is auto-generated by Euno. There is no need for manual ingestion. There is no need for manual stitching or override. Everything, the transition between layers, between maps, between different types of sources within technology, everything is done automatically. I'm expanding the lineage all the way upstream and all the way downstream. You can see here a mini map with the entire lineage. You can also zoom up to show it to you. Okay, it goes all the way upstream and downstream. And, you can see a breakdown here. So it includes Power BI report, Looker dashboards and reports, Tableau dashboards, views, and so on. Just going to pick one of those Power BI reports. Now, within this entire lineage, I can just choose to see the focused lineage. It will show me the exact path between this table and Snowflake that we started with through this Power BI table, Power BI tile, all the way to the Power BI report. Let me close that, go back to the table we started with. Similar to the table level lineage that I just showed you, we can expand and select a specific column. Let me pick, this column in particular. I've just double clicked it to generate the column level lineage all the way upstream and downstream for this particular column. But, that's the long way to do this. I would like to explore later with you how you can do all of that using Cursor or your preferred AI agent. But let's continue with this, standard UI flow. Then we have the column here in this column and an entire path upstream on a field level and the entire path downstream. And we can see here Tableau dashboards and Tableau views and specific columns in embedded data sources and published data sources and so on and so on. Now for this particular column, I'm going to open its side panel. We can also explore the impact analysis. What happens if want to delete or change this column, everything downstream that's going to be impacted, dashboards, views, embedded data sources, published data sources. Let me expand one of those. So and their exact usage. So there's one dashboard that's going to be impacted with 33 impressions in the past 30 days. There are another 10 dashboards that are going to be impacted, but they had 0 impressions in the past 30 days, which means this is less risky. I can pick another example here. So embedded data sources that are going to be impacted. The first one had 71 impressions in the past 30 days, and only one field in this embedded data source is going to be impacted, similar to the resources themselves, the users, the owners that are going to be impacted by this change. So that's the impact analysis that you can explore in the UI. And that's the lineage that you can explore with the UI. And the next chapter, I'm going to show you how you can explore all of that directly from Cursor. Okay, so let's go back to this column level lineage and this particular column that we focused on. And as I mentioned, you can explore the impact analysis in this user interface. What I'm going to do next, I'm going to copy the ID of the column and I'm going to open Cursor. Now, Cursor is connected via MCP to Euno, meaning I can query context directly via the MCP server in Cursor. And I want to write something like, I want to delete the column with URI. That's the ID that I just copied. And I want to ask what's going to be impacted? Who should know? And that's a classic engineering workflow, right? So the first thing that Cursor will do, it's got a question that requires data context. It's going to connect with Euno, and it's going to pull directly the impact analysis of the asset. And that's an amazing demonstration of the importance of, the ability to surface instant context, to be able to pull this entire impact analysis instantly from Euno. And let's go over this together. So it connected with Euno to get some AI instructions, and then it pulled the resource impact analysis after it found it in the graph. And here's the entire impact analysis. So there are 107 downstream resources that are going to be affected: Tableau dashboards, views, Tableau fields, and so on. And it gives you the high impact ones, the ones that are actually highly used and are more sensitive and more risky. And who should know? So the must notify people, the owners of the actively used asset, and people that should be notified, the owners of the impacted but assets but that have lower usage and so on. So this entire impact analysis was surfaced in Cursor directly from Euno. Now let's continue in Cursor. After this impact analysis, I want to try another classic analytics question. Let's look at this example. In the customer success overview board dashboard, I see that the daily active user metric is dropping, whereas in the product analytics dashboard, it looks like it has gone up in the last month. Where is the discrepancy coming from? When I'm running this query, actually the tool needs to find the two dashboards, identify the metric, and go all the way upstream to try and find the discrepancy. This is a classic analytics dilemma. You want to understand why something goes up, some other thing goes down. You need to understand the exact calculation. It's a classic example where lineage plays a crucial role, but this can take days for teams to manually understand and find the discrepancy and figure it out. But with the help of Euno, Cursor can connect with Euno, find those assets, find the metric, trace the upstream lineage, compare the code and the logic, until it finds the exact discrepancy. So we're going to wait a few more seconds while this analysis is running, and we see every step along the way, and now we're going to get the answer. Look how fast. So let me scroll up again. The two dashboards are not showing the same metric. They share a name, but each is built from a different DBT model upstream and a different definition of what counts as active. And it will find us the exact discrepancy. So let me go down here. It found exactly the DBT models where there is a difference. You see here that the events that are included in the code are login, posted to discussion with email, change section. But here there's another event, message Slack bot. And that's the reason for the discrepancy, why the trends can go in opposite directions, because there is an additional event, and so on and so on. So, that's a very cool, fast way to get context to answer analytics or business questions in Cursor. And you don't even need to access Euno or be in the UI. You just ask your question and Euno will pull the context instantly for you. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about governance. And, as I mentioned earlier, one of the integrations in this demo account is the Sierra integration. Sierra is a DSPM system that is able to classify sensitive data information like PII, PCI, and tag those columns. Euno is importing these classifications and associating them with columns in Snowflake or Databricks. But what happens on the Power BI or Tableau side? Those tools access the warehouse with one shared account access. So in fact, Tableau can see all that sensitive data, and then there are lots of manipulations on the Tableau Power BI side, transformations, queries, and so on. And business users are actually exposed to that sensitive data through reports, dashboards, or even agents that run on those tools. And there is no ability through those DSPM platforms to track the exposure of sensitive data there. So here's how you can leverage Euno's active tags, the governance capability, the automated governance capability built into Euno's context in order to track that. So I'm going to show you one of those tag that it's actually a custom tag. We call them active tags because they're live and they continuously monitor the lineage, and they're able to continuously tag assets as things evolve and change in your data model. So this tag, we call it relies on PII, and we define it as, a tag that will enrich every resource that is relying anywhere upstream on the use of PII as relying on PII. Okay, and this is leveraging the Sierra classifications. Anything that is in personal information will be propagated so that anything downstream that relies on it will be tagged as relying on PII. Now, I'm going to go to the Euno assistant. Similarly, I could do this in Cursor, Claude, the agent of your preference. And I'm going to ask a question like that. Are there any reports and dashboards being used that rely on PII? You can see that rely on PII becomes part of the language. It's a filter, it's a property. It was a custom tag that was defined, based on those Sierra classifications. But now you can filter on that. And you see it generates an EQL, a uniquerying language. As I mentioned before, the AI agents, learn how to generate those queries very, very quickly. And now we got the list of the high usage assets that are relying on PII. We have here, the Power BI dashboard, this report, this dashboard, and this Tableau dashboard. Now, I want to ask a follow-up question, which is, for the lead pipeline report, this one here, which users have access to this report? And that's another thing that can be mapped. It doesn't only map the resources and the relationships, it also maps the users and their access. In this case, that we integrate with Power BI, we would pull the access from Enter ID. So we can tell you who are the users that are actually accessing PII through this lead pipeline report in Power BI. And it's going to query the different users and their permissions and display the list of users that, the individual users and the users group that actually got access to this report. And maybe one final question, okay, now that I know that these are the users, can you tell me if anyone in the restricted group actually used the report, not just got access, but actually used the report? And, this is a classic incident response kind of analysis, and you get all those instant answers thanks to Euno's context and lineage and usage mapping that are all stitched together. everything is surfaced is here in real time to the agent. And similar to using Euno system, this could be a security agent of a security team that is trying to run an incident response because they discovered there is a new sensitive column in Snowflake. Yes, it checked the usage of the restricted group, the group identified as having restricted access. And there are no members, thank God, of the restricted group that have actually used or opened the lid pipeline report. So that's another cool example of how you can use active tags in Euno to expand the coverage of DSPM systems all the way to BI tools and their agents. And built on that, we can even, generate automated workflows that will send you, proactive alerts whenever something that shouldn't be exposed to a user group or it's accessed by people that don't have permissions is actually accessed, and you can get proactive notifications on that. Now, another example about the governance capabilities of Euno. So Euno's context is designed to be complete and fully automated, to be surfaced in real time, instantly to AI agents. They're able to query the context graph and get exactly the context that they need. But here are a few ways in which Euno can design this context with a built-in governance. And I mentioned active tags before, but let's look at this example. So there's a lot of talking about certifying data assets for AI, determining how do you determine that something's AI ready. And so many teams are manually labeling tables and assets and columns. And here's a mechanism. So Euno has a rule-based mechanism to do that. So here's an example. This is a custom definition that every organization can have its own definition, but that's an example of what's considered certified AI ready. We define certified AI ready any Tableau resource that is connected only to tables managed by DBT models. That's considered a source of truth for my organization, and not using any table which is not managed by DBT models. Once this tag is defined, and it's defined with the same EQL querying language, the Euno querying language, every Tableau asset is immediately labeled as either certified or not certified. Okay, now we can use this definition of certified, and I'm going now to the assistant and I can say, hey, what are the dashboards, or even let's be more precise, the Tableau dashboards that are related to sales that are AI certified. Just like before, AI certified becomes part of the language, part of EQL, and we can query for all the Tableau dashboards that are actually tagged, labeled as AI certified. So it's going to run this query and present the list of dashboards in a few more seconds, which is very cool because now we can tell the difference between AI certified dashboards and non-certified dashboards. This holds also for metrics, for calculated fields, for data sources, for any type of logic or data model asset. But it's not just that. You see here the AI certified dashboard. So we found the sales report, and it's analyzing for more results. So let's see how many more we get. It found 8 Tableau dashboards related to sales that are AI certified. Here's the entire list. So they're all related to sales, obviously, and they're all AI certified. Now, what we could do with this AI certification is we could actually say, hey, if you are working in the sales domain, you're using AI, we could limit the scope of logic or assets that your AI agent will be exposed to those that are AI certified. In other words, Euno has got this concept of personas. And I'm showing you an example here. I'm picking the customer success manager persona here. So for each persona, we can say, hey, what's that permission set for the persona? What is the domain, the scope of context that this persona is exposed to? And those domains can be segmented and labeled in the very high granularity using those active tags like AI certified. But we can also give specific instructions or build specific skills. Hey, you start analytics answers by reviewing available Snowflake semantic views, for example, or AI certified assets in Tableau, like the example I showed you before. So that's how you can leverage active tags, the ability to determine what's AI certified, and combine it with personas that are associated with every agent. So to conclude this live demo, I I want to highlight a few important points. Euno is the AI context platform that is designed to enable your AI agents of any type. It can be Snowflake Intelligence, it can be Databricks Genie, it can be Claude, Cursor, Glean, ChatGPT, Gemini, you name it. If you want to connect them to your enterprise data core platform like Snowflake, like Databricks, like Power BI, and you run questions, or you want to build workflows, or you want them to act autonomously, you need real-time context. That's exactly what Euno offers. We're integrating with, all data platforms, ETL, ELT tools, BI analytics tools, security, identity, access tools, quality observability, and we're adding more integrations every week. The important is to get full context and to be able to surface it at runtime. Now, we collect all that metadata to continuously reconstruct a context graph. But on top of that context graph, with the end-to-end fully automated column level lineage that is stitched with usage and ownership and code, we have built 4 layers that are designed to capture institutional knowledge, this knowledge that lives in people's mind. Those dynamic governance logic rules, like I demonstrated, what's considered AI certified, what's relying on PAI, what's governed, but what's well documented, what was built according to a standards. You can articulate those rules in natural language, and things will be labeled automatically, and those labels will stay live as things evolve and change. They will update accordingly. Another layer that is super important is the glossary layer. Euno can capture your business glossary. We're indexing those terms and we're adding relationships to this context graph. So if you have an external glossary in some legacy data catalog, in Confluence pages, in docs, in spreadsheets, whatever, you can programmatically load those terms to Euno. Euno will index them, add them to the context graph, and you can keep enriching your business glossary either with your data teams or using some of the cool automations that auto-generate glossaries based on context gaps it identifies. And finally, the concept of personas that I demonstrated. I mean, different personas in the organization need different levels of details, different scopes of context, and sometimes even different tones of voices. You can tailor the context based on the persona. And actually, gives you this control plane where you have end-to-end visibility and control of all your AI agents and what kind of context they're exposed to. So to summarize, I mean, there's 3 things that are important. We call them CIG. Your context needs to be complete, and at the AI age, complete means autonomous, continuous, and live. Your context has to be surfaced instantly to agents to have a real conversational, fast, speedy AI experience. And this is achieved in Euno thanks to the fact Euno manages the metadata and the context graph on a graph database technology and develop this EQL, uniquerying language that agents learn so fast and are able to query exactly the context they need. And that's what I showed you with the context, with the cursor and the Euno assistant examples. And finally, context must be designed with built-in governance. You have to be able to control who gets which scope of context, what's considered certified, what's safe, what's trusted, and what's not. And this must be automated as well, because you cannot rely on people just manually labeling, curating, or deleting tables. At the AI age, everything needs to move at the pace of AI. So finally, wherever there is context, AI actually works. And as I showed you, it can be for analytics agents, but also for engineering, for operations, for applications, and for security agents. Context is important for every data workload that runs on your data platforms.